you can throw so much money at paid marketing, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, if the product isn't good, you may get one sale, but you're not going to build a relationship.
As founders of and just brand builders, you have to be slightly nuts
You have
to
to
like
be.
this.
For me, I like to think of a brand and building a brand like you're creating a human. I always say with marketing, you need the head and the heart.
Hey friends, welcome to Above the Fold podcast. I'm your host, Jess Servion. We're going to be talking about everything in your customer's journey. You're going to learn things about customer experience, brand experience, and marketing secrets that help you drive your brand success. So stay tuned, buckle up, and let's get into the episode.
Welcome back to another episode of Above the Fold podcast. I am back in New York City, and I am joined by Suze Dowling, who's the co-founder of Pattern Brands. Welcome to the show, Suze.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm so excited to meet you in person. Like, I'm actually a really big fan of you online. Like,
my
you
gosh.
are starting this like D2C operator jam, and like when I was like doing research, I was like, man, she is a bad bitch.
Thank you so much. I love
love
that.
a bad bitch. But tell the audience like who you are. Like, tell me a little bit about your background.
So, obviously co-founder of Pattern. And for those that don't know Pattern, so we are a portfolio of brands. We always like to say a family of brands. We have 7 brands in the family, and all of the brands really have this mission to help people enjoy daily life at home. So I
Yeah.
always say it's those like micro moments of your day that you just don't even think about, but those are the moments that actually make you just feel so happy.
Yeah.
And so our whole brand portfolio, operates with that mission in mind.
Yeah. I mean, I will say, I don't know if you guys can see this on the tables, but we have like some of the products, some of the Pattern products here. And going back to like what Suze is saying, but like even a cup like this, even though it's just so simple, right?
It's
just so
joyful.
simple, this brings me joy. I love
Well,
these.
this
types
is
of
the
cups.
thing. I think for me, look, I'm such an introverted little homebody
Yeah.
that I love being at home, but I also think that, again, so many of our products are, we sell bedding, we sell, towels, we sell
Mhm.
kitchen tools. And it's those things that are like very practical items. You use them every single day. And look, I'm not saying I'm changing the world here, but hopefully I'm making your day just a little bit better. And you know
Yeah.
what? That makes me feel great.
It brings you joy, even if like someone. Well, it's so interesting because you know how you like will buy apparel, right? We'll buy
Mhm.
apparel, we'll buy makeup, we'll buy that like those
Yes.
things in abundance. But like if you are a homebody, or if you're like getting a wedding gift from somebody, like just in any gifting situation, going into a homeware store is actually really kind of fun.
I love
And
it.
maybe this is just like introverts unite, but like it's kind of fun and cute, right?
I love it. I mean, look, I have been interested in homeware since I was probably 2 or 3 years old. Like, I
Yeah.
was that weird little child. So, I grew up in the country in
Yeah.
South Australia, and so I would go into what we would call, like, the op shop, so a thrift store, and I'd buy secondhand home magazines because I couldn't afford with my pocket money at, like, 3 years old
Yeah.
to be able to buy an actual magazine. And so I had just a stack of, like, Home Beautiful, Better Homes and Gardens
Yeah.
type magazines, and I would just sit and look at them and imagine all of the ways that you could make home feel like home.
Yeah.
Little odd 3-year-old.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think that's odd. I think as a child, I did really weird things. Like, this doesn't have to do with homewares, but like I am really into like marketing, content marketing, obviously like
Yeah.
podcasts, right? When I was younger, my mom got me a camcorder and I was so obsessed with like making like new renditions of music videos.
Oh, good
So
for
like
you.
I wanted to be a music video
I
director.
think you were much cooler than me as a child. 'Cause, like, I'm like, I had a button collection where I would collect pretty buttons that
Okay.
I thought were beautiful, and then I named my cat after it.
Oh, I love that. Wait, I know we're rambling a little bit, but like I do want to say one other thing. I have a really good friend and her name is Buttons, and she's also from the country in Australia, but I don't know exactly where. I don't think it's South Australia,
Oh.
but her name is actually Louise, but her nickname is Buttons because she collected buttons.
No,
Is
I
it an
need to be
Australian
friends
thing?
with her. This is amazing. Wait
know.
1 second. I've never heard of this before.
I-
We need to like put us in
I think you
contact.
guys would be friends. Okay, well, I'll get us back on track. But during Pattern's journey, you have like such this extensive like D2C background, like and just like growing commerce, and I really want to talk about these things, and like I think you can offer so much to this audience. So first hard question.
Okay.
Building Pattern, what was your first oh shit moment that you got through, but like you look back and you're like, no business book would have ever taught me how to do that.
I think a few things. So, backstory before, so my co founders and I have worked together for 13 years.
Wow.
So, before we built Pattern, we had a branding agency. And we were, world class at bringing brands to market. And I think one of the first oh shit moments with Pattern was honestly, I had no idea that running an agency business, where again, we were building these incredible brands, was going to be such a difference
Mhm.
to building an operating business. And so I remember in the early days of Pattern, I spreadsheeted everything out. I had every work stream. I thought I was so prepared. The biggest mistake I would say for step 1, but this is something you will find in business books, but I think it's important to underscore,
Yeah.
is we got away from listening to the customer. Coming from an
Mm.
agency background, we had so many clients, and
Mhm.
I feel like, honestly, we were just so excited. We're like, "Oh my god, we don't have clients now. We can build whatever we want."
Mhm.
And I think that that is such a mistake. You are not building for you. You are building to serve your customer.
Mm.
And you may not have customers yet, but this is where we need to get out there. We need to talk to people. We need to understand them. We need to hear from them, the good, the bad, the ugly,
Yeah.
what drives them. And we need to deeply listen to them. And again, it's not saying, okay, don't have any innovation for yourself. And if you so wholeheartedly believe in something, like push that through. But it really changed my belief system. Everyone says direct to consumer, right? We like to now say direct with consumer.
Yeah.
It's how do you build with them? How do you create with them? Because that's going to be what makes the difference. And candidly, for our first brand, we didn't.
Yeah.
So with our first brand, we got so caught up in doing everything perfectly. So on paper, we had, this amazing brand. We had 100-page brand book. We, got amazing launch press. We did all of these things, and yet we did everything wrong in some ways, in that we hadn't connected with the
Yeah.
customer. We also hadn't looked at the economics and really made sure that we were investing in the right places. And that first brand, Equal Parts, that we launched, again, it had so much buzz, but guess what? After the buzz died down, there was no substance,
Yeah.
and the product wasn't quite the right product for the customer. And it meant that we had to relaunch a year later. It took us a year to kind of continue to iterate and come out with a
Mhm.
version 2. And by the time we came out with that version 2, there were so many competitors in the space that had already established themselves
Mhm.
that there wasn't really like a business that made sense to build.
Yeah.
And that was a big, kicking yourself in the butt moment.
Yeah, totally. Man, I agree with you. I really agree with you on like learn that oh shit moment and learning from that oh shit moment and listening to your customers. This is something I constantly preach, right? But like people, I wouldn't say people, I wouldn't say like people disagree with it, but it's like it's something that in brand building that people forget. People
Yes.
constantly forget. It's like you get so caught up in the paid ads that you need to put out in your growth and get inquiring the customer from like a revenue perspective, but then you forget that you are literally building so a customer can buy from you. And if you don't create a product where that customer is, it's a need, it's a want, it has a product market fit, whatever it is, right? You have nothing.
Oh, 1,000%. Again, you can throw so much money at paid marketing, but at
Yeah.
the end of the day, if the product isn't good, you may get one sale, but you're not going to build a relationship. And so
Yeah.
much of this is how do we build a relationship so that we're going with them beyond just selling them one product.
Yeah.
And again, I think no matter what stage of business, again, for us, we're quite scaled now. And I'm hopping on the phone with customers and taking customer interviews and learning from
Yeah.
them. Just this week, I've probably done 4 or 5 customer calls. And it's one of the most rewarding things that I can do as well, because honestly, you actually then hear how your product changes people's lives.
Yeah.
You hear the impact, but you also learn kind of how they're feeling when they're purchasing it, what those emotions are, and it makes your marketing so much stronger.
So much stronger. Well, marketing is, I mean, that's a whole other subject, right? I do think that marketing right now has gotten away from who we're marketing to. And I mean, not to talk about controversy, but we're going to talk about some controversy right now. The Sydney Sweeney
Yeah.
American Eagle thing. That's like the hot subject that's going on in the marketing world right now in this moment, right? And, I don't want to like get into like opinions of it from like a political view, but I do think that what's so interesting, let's take this as the case study. What's so interesting is that there's a big Y2K movement in apparel, right?
Yes.
Abercrombie and Fitch has made a comeback. These jeans, Abercrombie and Fitch. Hollister just came out with their 2000 collection.
Mhm.
And then American Eagle is obviously a competitor to a Hollister and Abercrombie. So then they come out with a Sydney Sweeney
Yeah.
campaign, right? And for anybody who doesn't know what's going on with it, basically there's just a lot going on. Okay, there's just a lot there, but it's so tone deaf. It's like, yes, it's a it's kind of a nod to the Brooke Shields ad that
Yes.
God, was it Calvin Klein that did it? But it was kind of a nod to that Brooke Shields one, that other controversial one from like back in the day, but it was so tone deaf by American Eagle that they missed the mark. And so getting back to the first point of this is that I think marketing as a whole has gotten away from the customer, and taking that American Eagle example, they don't, yes, you're doing something to be on trend, to go to that Y2K trend and sell your product, but then you've lost who your fucking customer is because you're not even
I
putting.
think that's like one of the things with this is so much of the marketing can sometimes be surface level,
Yeah.
right? Where it's just we're saying something to be clever or to be witty or to make a statement. But that's actually not what causes the emotional resonance either.
Yes.
And so again, for me, I like to think of a brand and building a brand like you're creating a human.
Yes.
And
Same.
so much of this is like, how do you create a brand that has depth and layers and personality and also is contextually aware
Hmm.
of where they're saying something and what they're saying and who they're saying it to?
Yeah, absolutely. The emotional resonance is the thing that we've like lost touch with a little bit. I don't think it's every brand, but like that example is a big, massive brand that has lost it, right?
I
And
think
there's.
so. I mean, look, I think the pendulum swings both ways. I
Mhm.
do think, in building D2C brands, a decade ago, we were probably too
Mhm.
emotional only and not
Mhm.
balancing with, the function and some of the substance. And then I think the pendulum swung so that it was so deep in paid and performance
Mhm.
marketing that it kind of forgot about some of the soul of the
Yeah.
brand. And hopefully the pendulum will kind of sit in a healthy middle because I think I always say with marketing, you need the head and the heart.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. What's your take on I feel like we've gone away from the questions now, but I'm curious, as we talk about this
Yeah.
subject, what's your take about AI usage in creatives?
Look, it's tough. I'll say we I'm a big fan of AI and I like to embrace
Mhm.
AI. I think there's a balance here. Look, for us, I will say some things like we do some AI mocks that are actually pretty damn good.
Yeah.
And, when you're having to normally spend a lot of money on a photo shoot in
Mhm.
location, that can be pretty game changing. I think where, I still am, you know, dipping my toes in is, like, AI that is generating humans in,
Mhm.
any sort of creative. I think that it's one thing to generate a static scene. I think it's another to infuse humanity into
Yeah.
that.
Yeah.
Um, I do think it's the future. I
Absolutely.
think that the there is something, though, and this is just more in your visual language. I love a touch by hand element in a
Mm.
brand. For me, there's something about how do you balance kind of a little imperfection in a brand,
Mhm.
and that makes it feel more human. Back in our brand agency days, one of the things we would, a lot of the time do in our brand logos was do a final kind of finishing, like hand finish. And so I think with AI, the risk is that there's going to be a sea of sameness
Mhm.
versus, that gritty humanity in that touch by hand element. And I think only time will tell how we
Mhm.
balance that. I think there is going to be a balance.
Yeah. I think time will tell how people's trust shifts between using like AI creatives versus like, in real life one.
Absolutely.
But I think that there has to be a good balance.
I think so. And look, I think AI is so powerful, but it's also as powerful as the prompt that you give it and the
Absolutely.
context that you give it. And Look, I'm really excited though to think about AI in terms of how do we better understand our customer.
Yeah.
And, I was talking to a founder last night that's, doing the synthetic personas that's going to be, and I was saying, well, what's different to me creating my own synthetic persona in GPT? And for him, it was, how he was triangulating the data. But I think for all founders these days, there's no excuse. There's no barrier anymore to getting out there, getting customer interviews, but then also feeding that information in and understanding in AI how you can then go deeper beyond the surface of the questions you ask to
Yeah.
what you can infer to how you then can kind of better create content that speaks to that customer.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, getting back to the brand building
Yes.
questions.
Okay.
I'm curious from your opinion, in your eyes, what are the non-negotiables when you're building a brand from zero?
Again, I think there needs to be and then I think there's brand and business because I
Yeah.
think when there's brand, it's how do you create something that feels human, and the way that you
Mhm.
do that is by not skipping over the brand strategy. Again, it's funny coming from
Amen, girl.
right?
Amen.
It's funny, like, coming from a brand agency. So back in our brand agency days, we were working primarily with venture-backed, businesses, and, our typical project fee would be 6 figures for a brand book. And I always say to founders these days, there's no need to do that, but where you do need to spend the time, energy, and this can be you DIYing it for yourself, is on the foundational brand strategy.
Mhm.
We can go a bit scrappy with copy and visual identity. Like, again, there's so many resources for us these days, and you can
Mhm.
continue to iterate into that. But if the strategic foundations are not there, the entire business framework is shaky because your brand strategy is going to be the lens that you make every single decision for the
Yeah.
rest of time.
Literally, literally. What's so interesting is so my day to day, like I run a marketing and CX agency. Like that's what I do for money,
Yes.
right? And but I really help brands at the beginning stages. Like that's like my sweet spot. Like I love being at like a 0 to 4 moment. You do not know how many brands I come across that I'm like, okay, cool. So then, like, even no matter what subject, if we're talking about retention and life cycle or customer experience, whatever it is, I'm like, great. So, do you have like a brand strategy deck or guidelines? And do you know how many people are always like, oh, yeah, we're working on that? I'm like, how did you even come to the market?
Well, you
Like,
know what? I think people mistake that and think, "Oh, that's something I do later to have in a deck that looks pretty." And I say, like,
yeah,
again, this isn't about looking pretty or sounding pretty. This is about really the substance of who you are and why do you exist. If you can't answer the
absolutely.
why, you're not going to be able to create something that does feel really authentic and that ultimately serves, a need. And again, I believe a brand is a person. It's always why when we were doing brand naming, people would say, "What's the trick of brand naming?" And to be honest, any name can actually work. Again, there's some things can, is it distinctive? Can you pronounce it, etc. But at the end of the day, a brand name is like a child's name.
Yeah.
It's the personality that you infuse with that actually is going to make you either love or not love
Yeah.
the name.
Yeah. It's making it human. Like I
Absolutely.
think of any brand that I build, like Above the Fold, my agency Open Late. I'm also building a brand, a sleep supplement called Sweet REM.
So
Like,
you are not busy at all.
oh no, I'm not busy. No, don't worry.
You're very chill.
I'm super chill. I actually am really chill. I just love being busy.
Me too. I'm
Like,
like, who needs sleep?
I know. Well, wait till we go offline and I ask you about some women's event I want you to come speak at. So, and then we'll even talk about it further. But as I look at just even those three things that I'm building, right? Agency, brand, and Above the Fold, I also have a newsletter. Each one of those like has a very distinct personality purposely. And so many times people are like, well, why do you need all of it? Why can't you just do it all in like one place? And I'm like, absolutely not.
I mean, that would be
It
like,
needs a person.
why but it's also like, why do I have 7 brands versus 1?
Right. Why not? Right. Why can't you like under pattern? Right. Why can't you have multiple different things? And like, yes, they're housed, you know?
Well, look, I think that's the thing again, they have one unifying mission, but we describe them as sibling brands, where, look, there's
Yes.
absolutely some of the same
They're
DNA
babies.
where they and a number of these have been acquisitions, so it's finding the same DNA in terms of, the why, and then again, you can find visual connections between the brands, but it's also giving them their own distinctive personality because the brand that you're attracted to that fits in your kitchen should have honestly a different personality to the brand that you're about to crawl into bed with in your bedding.
Absolutely, absolutely. So then from your perspective, like having all of these multiple brands, creating these different personalities and these different like storylines with them, when do you feel like a brand has found its voice? Like when do you feel good about that?
Look, I think with a brand and I think the voice will change over time.
Mhm.
Again, this is going back to the idea of it being a person. Your brand in year 1 is probably actually going to sound and look kind of different to year 5 or year 10, and that's okay. Your
Mhm.
brand is growing up, it's maturing, and it's reacting to, again, the context in which it lives and the people in which it's interacting with. But again, the core DNA of it should still be there. Why does it exist, and what is its kind of reason for being? I think where a brand feels like a good, like, "Oh, this clicks," is usually when you see the voice and the visuals come together, but
Mm.
them playing up different personality traits. This is one tip I always like to give founders is so much of the time, I think founders want to just say, "Oh, my brand is one personality trait." That's not
Absolutely not.
human.
Yeah.
We have so many different traits within us, and so I always say, let's find 3 to 5 traits, but then let's play them up in different ways in your voice and your visuals. Because this was the trick with our agency, Gin Lane, that we really found, was you actually create a little tension between the voice and the visual. That's what makes it not feel one note.
Mhm.
That's what makes it actually feel more human and more authentic, and again, that's kind of the aha moment where things start to click.
Mhm.
But so much of this is going to be also, how is your customer reacting to this? Are they starting to use your language? Like, I always love when I'm doing my customer interviews to say, just in your own words, how would you describe our brand if you're talking to a friend? And it's so wonderful when they start to use the words and the language that are how we think about our brand,
Mm.
because it means that our experience around the brand is creating that feeling for them, where again, the language itself is just really coming organically.
Yeah, yeah, it's resonating.
Absolutely.
It's like and it's your baby coming to life.
I mean, it's again, it's one of those things where sometimes I think, "Oh my gosh, it would be almost so much easier to not be in this industry of creating brands and products because, we're all a little crazy and it's
We are.
we are,
We are nuts. As founders of and just brand builders, we are you have to be slightly nuts to
You
be
have
to
to
like
be. But
this.
also, I think it's because you believe the impossible is possible. Like, that's the thing with us.
That nail on the head, nail on the head. Like even for me and even for other founders that like I help, right? When in my work, that's the biggest thing is that one, we have to be a little bit nuts, but we also just like there's no reason you create something you can't make it happen,
I
you know?
again,
Like why not?
that's the thing, it's like dare to dream. Again, I think sometimes it's so funny, I'm such a type A personality,
Same.
such a type A. But at the same time, in some ways, the daring to dream is kind of the antithesis of this because it's sometimes things you don't have control over, but you're taking a giant leap of faith and saying, "No matter what, I'm gonna find a way to push this forward."
Yeah, absolutely. And whether it fails or not, at least you learn some things.
Absolutely. Look, I think we shouldn't be scared of failure. I think a lot
Yeah.
of the time, especially as type A people, failure and feedback can be seen as scary or wrong. Failure and feedback is wonderful.
Yeah, I agree with you. I totally agree with you. Well, when launching a new brand at Pattern, so I mean, obviously, like I know we're talking a lot about like the brand building and like creating it and that storyline, but I am still curious as to like what does come first. Like, all right, if you're like, okay, I'm going to acquire this brand or I'm going to create this brand, is it the product insight or the brand narrative for you that comes first?
Look, I think it's usually the market insight.
Mm,
And I think that that's like it's a little bit of a merging of the two,
mm-hmm,
because they are so intertwined. I don't think you can come up with just a brand story without having the substance of the product because so much of brand also it ends in emotion, but it starts with your technical and functional benefits that
mm-hmm,
lead up and create that emotion. And so for me, I really look at the market opportunity. I look at the customer sentiment around that market. I look at where trends are going. Again, there is a lot of data and analysis that goes into then settling on, is this something that I'm willing to go and spend so much of my life, creating and putting into existence? I also think you have to be, after you have kind of the market setting and kind of start to narrow in on the product and brand, again, it goes hand in hand. It's almost like you're parallel pathing things where it's like a virtuous cycle between the two. As you learn more about your product, you can go deeper into the brand. And as you learn more about the brand, you can further enhance the product. But I also think you need to be really pragmatic. Again, I think this is something where we have obviously talked a lot about the more emotional side of things, but let's
Yeah.
talk about like the business side of things. Like we need to be clear on what's your MSRP. We need to be really clear on what your margins are. Even if you don't plan to go omni-channel from day one, let's make sure your margin picture and your MSRP makes sense in the context of when you maybe do want to go into retail 12, 24, 36 months in. Like, really map that out. Make sure you're creating something that has unique IP.
Yeah.
Really make sure you're owning the customer file and really thinking about the, customer journey from day one and
Yeah.
how you're creating and selling this product. Think about the unboxing experience. How are we educating customers? How are we bringing them back to our
Yes.
site? So,
Yes.
it's something that I think, again, you can have an amazing product idea, but if the business side of it, if the margins don't make sense, if the price point doesn't make sense, it's not going to go anywhere,
Yeah.
and vice versa.
Yeah. Well, switching gears a little bit, but kind of going to what we were talking about offline about like customer experience. Um, what's your personal philosophy on a customer's experience? And like, and I don't mean support. I mean like just your personal philosophy on like what that customer's experience should be. And then second, which because I feel like it could be a one answer, but where should founders focus their energy on or energy early on in regards to that?
Whew, that's a good question. Look, I think for the customer, I'm a firm believer that we're here to serve them. Like,
Mhm.
this is something that I also am just like, at the end of the day, I'm a human selling to another human, and I want to do the right thing by my customer. Sometimes I'll mess up, and sometimes my brands will mess up. Again, it's not to say we are absolutely perfect in everything we do. We're not.
Right.
But I think part of the reality in interfacing and building a relationship with a customer is acknowledging that, and also again talking to them like they're humans, whether that's a digital experience, whether that's a customer service ticket, whether that's the physical product that they're,
Yeah.
engaging with. I think on the digital, like D2C side of things, I also am a big believer in anticipatory hospitality.
Mm.
And so I really like to think, how as we create a product detail page, are we anticipating what this customer might be thinking, feeling, the questions they may have, and how we just like one step ahead where it just is seamlessly guiding them through that journey.
Yeah.
I think in terms of where you focus your energy, look, the unfortunate reality is it's a little bit of everything.
Yeah.
Like again, I think with a physical product, it can like your physical product has to be top notch. I'm again with anything digital, I'm actually all about like let's be scrappy, let's test, let's learn. With a physical product, I think it's so critical that you have an amazing product experience. Like I made a very big mistake early in my product development where I, was working on one of what became like a pretty big hero product for our second brand, Open Spaces, which was our first underbed storage.
Mhm.
And the supplier had said to me, "Well, don't worry, this little issue will be fixed in mass production." And I'd be like, "Okay, great. We've got to keep the timeline. Let's keep going." Wasn't fixed in
Oh,
mass
no.
production. And again, it was not the end of the world, but it was something that was definitely not an ideal customer experience. And so what we had happen was we actually sold out of that item like first day. It was super popular. And then guess what? Customers' first experiences were saying, I love the aesthetic, I love this, but actually it wasn't the best experience and it wasn't the most delightful to actually, use this item. And again, if you're creating an item, it's not just about the first impression, it's about
Yeah.
ongoing use and relationship
Absolutely.
that the customer has with that product, which is by virtue of that with your brand. And so that was, a really big mistake. So I'd say for founders, get the product right. This is
Mhm.
something we do not skimp here. The other area I'd say to spend your time is, again, talk to as many people as you can and get outside of your just friends and family circle. I don't want you talking to your friends and family and getting their opinions. I want you going at least a few kind of echelons outside of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. So when you think about retaining your customers for Pattern, right? Do you think that, I mean, we obviously talk a lot about like product experience because you're like selling physical
Yes.
products, but do you think that, like, how do you marry the product and the brand experience to retain the customer for them to keep coming back for more spatulas, more cups, like all of those pieces?
Again, I do think it starts with the product because if the product's not good, they're not going to
Right.
want to come back. But it's also then how do we think about, the life cycle of the customer with us? How are we creating, content that's engaging, compelling, educational? Again, I think a lot of the time, kind of getting back to some of the earlier conversations of people being a little more superficial in their marketing, I think a lot of the
Mhm.
time brands forget it's a privilege to be in someone's home. It's a privilege to be in someone's inbox.
Mhm.
This is not something where we should just be putting any content out there. It's we should be really thoughtful about the content that we're putting out there. And so for me, it's always if I'm putting something in someone's inbox, how can I make this worthwhile for them? This is them taking a few seconds or a few minutes out of their day to click and read.
Right.
What is this emotion that it's giving them?
Yes.
Is this giving them a chuckle? Is this something where we've done something a little tongue in cheek and that's all they're getting from it? Is this giving them, something of value? Is this educating them on how to better use their product? Whatever it may be, I think it's really important that we, again, don't take the fact that we have this relationship for granted
Mhm.
and that we be really thoughtful in anything that we're doing so that we're meeting the customer where they are.
Yeah. Girl, no notes. Like, literally no notes. Like, I completely agree with, like, all of those philosophies 'cause yes, it goes back to that, like, marketing conversation, like, in a growth perspective, but, like, if you were in somebody's inbox, you need to understand that time is very sacred.
Absolutely, because also it's something where if you don't understand that, they may give you a go once or twice, they may still keep reading, but guess what?
Mhm.
Just like if you're a toxic friend, you're gonna get cut out of my life. If you're a toxic brand,
Dude.
you're gonna get cut out of their
Yeah.
life. And, again, it's so much harder to win someone back that, like, let's not even put ourselves at risk for that.
Yeah. Yeah. You know, I know a lot like we're talking a little bit of like the inbox and like retention about like email and SMS. And I'm just curious for your opinion, just going back to like what we were talking about with like creatives and AI. Do you think it do you think it's a well-designed email or is it just good copy?
I think it's good content, and I think that
Content, yeah.
that is primarily good copy.
Yeah.
Again, I think if the subject line is not on point, people are not gonna open.
Right.
I think, some of our best performing emails are actually text only.
Yeah.
And so again, I don't think this is the days. And in fact, sometimes I will even look at our emails and I'll be like, "Whoa, this isn't the most aesthetically pleasing email I've ever seen." But you know what? It has really great, valuable content still within that. And like that at the end of the day is the most important thing. Again, I think and this is where again, I think for us, we work with some amazing copywriters on our brand voice, our kind of brand tone,
Mhm.
really getting into the brand language. We do use AI to supplement and for the copywriter to enhance their work though as well. And
Yeah.
so again, I think this is where it's the balance of how do you create the brand voice and the brand language with the human,
Yeah.
and then how do you help with some of the execution because again, execution is time consuming.
Yeah. I nail on the head. What advice would you give to first-time founders who were raising capital for a consumer brand today?
I don't know that they should do it.
I hot take, I actually agree with you on this.
I think that, and I think there's many forms of capital. This is something where are they raising institutional capital from a
Mhm.
VC or are they raising a friends and family round? They're very different. I think any capital that you're raising, you need to be really sure that this is something that you need, that you couldn't do without because you're going to be diluted and there's going to be additional
Yes.
voices in the room. Um, for a lot of consumer brands, I actually don't think that institutional capital makes sense. I do think there's certain categories if you're kind of in doing something that's truly like category defining that may warrant that, but by and large, I would caution against it.
Mm-hmm.
And I also think that the landscape has changed. I actually think it's much harder to raise any money these days for consumer. And so you're going and so I'd say build a business also where you are clear on if you don't raise this round, how you can still step forward. And again, look into non-institutional with friends and family. I think no matter what, people are going to have the question of why you, why now, and why this
Yeah.
opportunity. And so when you do go out to raise, you need to treat it really thoughtfully. This is not you going out and just saying, "Oh, I'm so passionate about this." Have your homework done.
Mm-hmm.
Again, practice. I used to walk around the block when we were raising, and I would think of all of the things that I was insecure about in the business, or that someone that was like kind of really catty would say to me if in my mind I was making
Yeah.
this up. And then I would come up with answers to those things because guess what? Like if you're thinking it, someone else is going to be thinking
Yeah.
it, especially if you're asking them for a dollar.
Yeah.
And so I think it's something to be really careful. One thing I will say though is so much of Pattern has grown through acquisition.
Yeah.
We've acquired a number of brands, and one of the things is not one brand that we acquired had taken on institutional capital.
Ooh, we love a bootstrap
And that was
story.
something where they bootstrapped. And again, they may have done friends and family rounds. They may have, approached some high net worth. But this was something where they then owned the vast majority of their cap table and they'd had to be scrappier. I always say constraints breed creativity.
Mm-hmm.
And that meant that the underlying fundamentals of these businesses were great. They had amazingly strong gross margins. They had customer love. They had product market fit. And those things combined make for something that then actually, ironically, becomes really attractive
Yeah.
to an investor.
Yeah, totally. When you were going through like your own raising and what's the one thing you've learned that you would share with like just I know it's
So
like we talked about the around the block and
I
stuff,
think
but
I think clarity.
yeah.
I think again, oftentimes people on their slides will try and jam pack in every single thought they've ever had. Clarity. Let's be so clear in how you're approaching this messaging. Less is more.
Yeah.
I would also say it's really something where I got given a piece of advice actually by, I think it was one of my investors years ago, that basically said, when you're raising for one round, write the deck for the next round.
Mm,
Because again, to the point of clarity, if you've written, and again, that deck will change, but if you've written the narrative of what this dollar amount is going to get you to before you go to your next round of capital, you're able to so much more articulately walk people through what that vision is with a reality of, and here's why I believe in my vision.
yeah. I love it. I love it.
Also, one little pet peeve, don't use headers that are not the takeaway of the page. So, for example,
Deck building 101,
people,
honestly.
but you would not believe how many founders send me their deck and ask feedback, and literally they're stating the problem. I'm like, let's not say the problem. We make the statement of, what our problem
Yeah.
is, because a lot of the time, again, you get a couple of seconds to make an impression. And if someone is flicking through your deck, guess what? They're not going and reading the size 10
What's the
font on the
problem?
page.
Yeah.
They're going to read the takeaways on the slide, and that's either going to excite them or it's not.
Yeah.
And so again, make sure your deck makes sense if I were to only read the headlines of your
Yeah.
deck.
Yeah. I know deck building is like an underrated skill. Like
It is such a skill set that again,
uh,
it's fascinating because I think a lot of the time I feel like people are presenting like their school homework assignment where you would say, here is the problem and here, but this is not what we're doing here. Again, deck building in itself is a form of marketing.
mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Our audience may not be our customer, but it is the investor, and we need to create something that's really compelling and engaging for them and be, again, contextually aware of where we're meeting them. They're incredibly busy. They're seeing, 50 different decks a day, and you're asking them for something.
Yeah, totally. Totally. So I wanted to take a second to also recognize like D2C operators, what you're
Thank you.
building, because I think it's really awesome. But you created D2C operator as a resource for others in the space. What gap were you seeing that made you want to start that platform?
So for me, and D2C Operator will like officially launch this fall, but it's been, gosh, over a year in the making.
Mm,
But essentially it really came from two areas. So one was, I've always loved advising a lot of other entrepreneurs, and I met these two really young entrepreneurs at the time that I met them. They were like 19 and 20 years old. And they had honestly been led astray by a lot of people and a lot of resources, and I think it hit particularly home because of their age, where I was just like, "This is so messed up, this is not okay." But the common story, right, was, again, it's really hard to bootstrap a brand, and I say that as someone that hasn't had to do that, right?
yeah.
I've been, in theory, fortunate in that I'm venture backed. Again, if I could have a do-over, I wouldn't necessarily build it
Yeah.
in the same way. But has meant that I've gotten to make some mistakes and some learnings that other people would never be able to make simply because I've had the resource to do so. And so I looked at these founders and I thought, this is so messed up. And so I actually started writing out some guidelines for them of here's how I think about this, or here's how we can DIY this, or have we
Yeah.
thought about this? And then at the same time, my degree is actually in education, so I do nothing with what I actually studied. I thought I was gonna become a teacher, and so there's a part of me that really loves the concept of teaching, and again, look, there's so many newsletter series out there, there's so many founder dinner series, there's so many conferences,
Yeah.
and that's all amazing and wonderful. For me, it was really, how do I, as a practical operator, write down some learnings, give some tools and templates, and hopefully shorten the learning curve for someone else because it's again, I think so much of this is just about how do you stay alive in this business, when creating your business long enough to find that win or that unlock that kind
Yeah.
of keeps you going and then gets you to the next step. And so my hope with the D2C operator is honestly to just be really authentic and real, but
Yeah.
also give the real life lived experience. And some of it is also me just saying, here are the people that I follow, here are the people I learn from, here are the newsletters that I enjoy reading,
Yeah.
because by no means am I claiming to be the expert at everything.
Yeah, but you're sharing your opinion, and I do think I mean, obviously I had to, do my research, right? And like and even though you're in soft launch right now, like the materials that you've been putting out are so easy to read, and I think there's a lot of value to it, and I'm really excited
Thank
as you
you.
grow it.
Honestly, it's brought me a lot of joy. I will say it's literally me doing this at like midnight, 1 a.m.,
Yeah, of
2 a.m.,
course.
and like hacking it together. But it is something where I don't know, again, I'm like, if I can help just one founder, that makes it worth it.
Absolutely. Well, Suze, we're at the end of the road.
Oh,
I know,
I'm
and
so
I feel like
sad. I
I
want
feel
this
like
to go
we
on
could
for
like
hours.
literally talk for hours, but it was so lovely having you on. I'd love for you to tell the audience like how they can connect with you and where they can find D2C Operator.
Oh, amazing. Thank you. So you can follow my personal journey with far too many pictures of my cat at Suze Dowling on Instagram. And for all my business tips and tricks, it's at the D2C operator.
Yes, lovely. Well, thank you so much for coming on. And thank you everybody for tuning in to another episode of Above the Fold. We'll catch you next week.
Dang, we've made it to the end of the podcast and you're still here. So thank you so much for listening to Above the Fold podcast. For the best of this episode and every episode, be sure to follow us on Instagram and my YouTube channel. And for deeper dives on the secrets to brand success, don't forget to subscribe to my weekly newsletter, Sunday Postcards. All right, my dudes and gals, see you next week.